Okay, so hello everyone, whether you're watching this live or by VOD, if that's YouTube or something else. This is Myriacast. Normally, Dodge has been running these, but Dodge is a bit predisposed, and also, we just decided pretty much today to redo this. I messaged Spoon earlier, so this is Myriacast. We are talking specifically today about D&D related gaming. Normally, we do a variation of RPG, JRPG type games, but today, just because of mutual interest between the both of us, D&D was a good topic to discuss. So let's just get intros out of the way. For myself, I'll be quick. So I'm Otto. I've been doing related activity with the Myriathon for a couple years now. Um, Myriathon is a charity, by the way, biannual charity gaming. We typically have done in the past 48 to 72 hours, but we're changing things a bit for June. You can see the date in the bottom right hand corner. And so for me in particular, just related specifically to D&D, I've been playing with Spoon in particular since college, so that was about 8 years ago. And I've DM'd and I've done it as a player. So Spoon, why don't you go ahead and intro yourself as well?
Yeah, sure. Those of you who are regulars on the Myriathon should know me. I've been working with the Myriathon for maybe year and a half to 2 years or so now. Yeah, I didn't say it, but I'm SPT Spoon or Spoon.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a I guess I started on Twitch as a Kingdom Hearts speedrunner and then joined the Myriathon, a couple of years ago. Um, Yeah, as far as D&D stuff goes, yeah, Otto and I both started at the same time in college. We were kind of, I wouldn't say forced or dragged into, but one of our friends decided while we were our senior year in college decided he was going to try out D&D, and he kind of pulled us, me, Otto, and a couple of other our friends who we lived with our senior year into a at that time 4E campaign, and
Mm-hmm.
we got our start there
Right.
and we've pretty much been playing ever since. We play in a weekly group online with me and Otto,
Mm-hmm.
a couple of the other guys who used to play with us back in college, and then my brother who is HC Ghost, who's been on the Myriathon as well.
Yeah, he's
So
he's been around here, and we've been doing it weekly basis on weekend just because that works really well with their schedules. So that's like the best approach for all of us because we're all over the country, or in your case, a little bit out of the country.
indeed.
Um, so let's talk now that the intros are a bit out of the way about. Well, unfortunately, we're sort of in all the same campaigns, so we'll just talk about the same campaigns. Um, Not necessarily talking about the past ones. So currently we are in two. So we're in a homebrew campaign that is hosted, or I guess DM'd in this case, by your brother, HC Ghost. The other campaign is a 5e, what do you call it? It's a
Module.
module, thank you. Curse of Strahd. And that's run by a friend of ours, Nick. He decided he wanted to run this Curse of Strahd module. So we've been doing that for a year, I want to say.
Ooh, I think it's been more than that. We might
More
be
than
in
that.
like close to a year and a half on that one at this point. It's
Been a
been
while.
Yeah, he limits the length of the sessions to 3
Hmm.
hours, and we've definitely had there were definitely some sessions in the middle of that campaign where it felt like we did almost nothing, so
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's
where
just
where we just, like, screwed around in town for the whole
right.
session or something, like,
It,
really.
which is fine to some extent, but yeah, if you want to move quickly,
Yeah,
just like messing around shopping isn't
yeah.
conducive to progression of story all the
Yeah, I'm
time.
not saying that's a bad thing. It's part of D&D in my
Right.
opinion and part of what makes it fun, but you're not gonna get through a campaign very quickly if you do that a lot, especially if you're only running like 3-ish hour sessions.
Right.
So,
So let's talk about that one a bit first. We don't have to go into great detail about our, escapades because that's like a whole different thing we could talk about. But let's just talk a bit about our characters. Well, you have two, and we'll get into that eventually. Maybe we'll
mhm.
talk about that later. But you have
That's a
two
that's a
characters,
fun story.
and I have one. So Let's start with your first one, Mogar. Talk about him.
Yes. Mogar Stonecutter, the dwarf druid. Um, I made him with the folk hero background, so I came up with this idea that he kind of found this weird green stone at some point, and that he became obsessed with like the Feywild and everything Fey, and kind of was a bit of a bomb bombastic type character who loved to sort of tout himself and say, "I'm so great, I'm the Emerald Dreamer," yada yada yada. So he built a, albeit very as a level 1 D&D character, but albeit a very small following, as a folk hero, as this Emerald Dreamer. And then for anybody who knows anything about Curse of Strahd, that kind of all goes out the window when you get sucked into Barovia. And
Yeah,
yeah, um,
pretty much everything went on.
but he still continues to do his normal like Emerald Dreamer type nonsense, even within Barovia, which is like a stark contrast to the scenario of Curse of Strahd, which is very dark and depressing and devoid of color, basically.
Right.
And he was all about that kind of bombastic and like wearing these bright like teal was basically his color.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, that was like his whole shtick, and then I ended up going into the Feywild archetype, which is called the Circle of Dreams.
Okay.
Once we got into the higher levels, or third level, I suppose. So that character was interesting and fun. He doesn't exist anymore, but we'll
Yeah,
get into that later.
his life was taken by my character, which we'll talk about later. So my character is a sorcerer of Yuan-Ti pure blood race. So this is something that was kept as much hidden as possible from everybody else in the campaign. Um, I talked to another friend. She was a Yuan-Ti as well in her campaign. She was talking to me about their demeanor and how they act, and they're a bit of like a they have like this. I don't want to say they have like this way about them where they just, it's not that they lack emotion, they don't understand other people's emotions, and they just don't care for them. So I was like, oh, that works out really well for what I was doing, to be clear. And so we were talking about that. But my character is Severus Bane. He is a kleptomaniac Yuan-Ti sorcerer with absolutely no regard for anybody else's. I don't want to say well-being, because I think he does care to some extent, but he just doesn't really care about how they feel about his actions. So he'll like go out of his way to steal valuables. He'll selfishly act to preserve his own life, as is the case with what happened with Mogar. And really, he's just not a good person. But I won't say that he's, with one exception, that he's just like actively trying to do things that he is just like, in his way, he doesn't think that his actions are purposely trying to screw. He has this weird way about him. So let's go into small details about the Mogar incident.
I just want to comment real quick on Severus. He would be like, to me, he's like kind of the stereotypical like chaotic neutral. He's not evil because he doesn't like do things specifically to like harm people. He doesn't like have any, at least as far as I know, any great machinations for like taking over the world or anything like that. He's just
Not really.
doesn't really care like what he does or how his actions affect other people. So he's just like, yeah, chaotic neutral alignment. Just like
Oh,
I'm gonna
completely.
do I'm gonna do what I want for me, and you can try and stop me and I don't care. Like
Right. And so the incident with Mogar, and you can obviously talk about this from your perspective, because I can just say right now, as a player, this obviously was something that I think was taken quite well, everybody. Um, which is a good thing we can talk about later. Actually, not necessarily with DM mistakes, but we can talk about the player side at some point. So the incident at hand was we were in a combat with, if you don't know Curse of Strahd, we didn't know at the time, but we thought we were in this. We had gotten this, like, I guess it wasn't even like necessarily an invitation. We had come across this caravan in the road that had been taken out, and there was a dead tiger, which I forgot the tiger's name at the time. But this was this was someone we knew, and so we investigated off the road, and we went and we found this table, this dining table had been set up, and we all were provided like various different notes regarding like how we felt about this invitation to dinner with Strahd. I think it was like it culminated in that, and then it ended up turning into a combat, because we obviously don't like him. So
I mean,
during
he's the main villain of the
right?
campaign. You're not
Right.
supposed to like him.
Right. We don't like him. So we ended up getting into this combat, and like it got to a point where Severus got on the top of a rock face, and he saw all these enemies and some allies, which is where we get to the unfortunate part. And so he decides to fireball it using a staff that he had acquired from Strahd, incidentally. So after which time, Mogar, Spoon in this case, went down. And I'm going to just let Spoon take it from here, because obviously I'm not Spoon. So I'm really curious, unless he wishes to not be my friend anymore after this, which is understandable, uh, to hear what that was like from his perspective, because I know my perspective.
Um, so I definitely saw what Otto was going for. It was like he went for the Hail Mary play. It was like he hit every single enemy on the map along with me and uh one other ally.
Yes, it was.
And
Yeah, I know who it was. I know who.
yeah, it was Severus's best friend in the party,
Jafar.
Jafar.
It was Jafar.
Um and again, from a tactical perspective, as a player and not like thinking as the character, I can see going for that. There was another option, which was to fire the fireball a little bit off to the side, which
Yep.
would have hit like 2 or 3 enemies and no allies.
Mm-hmm.
And that may have been the, I don't want to say, it may have been it was the less risky play,
Right.
like, would be to go for that. But he was, I guess he decided that we were maybe in a little bit of a dire situation and went for the Hail Mary play. He's like, all right, if I hit this, and we were fighting like, it wasn't Strahd, but it was Strahd's like
Rahadin.
lackey,
Rahadin.
Rahadin, and a bunch of like dragon
Mm-hmm.
wormlings. And like, all right, dragon wormlings, they can't be that, like, they're pretty squishy, right? I mean, none of us are staring at the monster manual, so we don't know exactly how many hit points they have or anything like
Right.
that. So he goes for he's like, man, all right, if I hit Jafar and Mogar and like take down like 2 or 3 enemies with this, it's worth it. Like, we can get them back up. Our rogue is like on the side of the party, just like
Right.
doing his own thing. He's gonna come in for a sneak attack.
Right.
We might be okay. But what ended up happening is myself, being Mogar the dwarf, who's also the only healer in the party, because the party was at that point druid, sorcerer, rogue, fighter, and our fighter that day was absent from the session, so the DM just had them not in the combat. They just weren't there.
Mm-hmm.
So your druid, the only healer, yeah, well, like, so basically the fireball didn't kill any of the enemies, and it downed both me and
And Jafar, I think it did. Yes, and a
Jafar,
bunch
who's
of
the other sorcerer in
Yep.
the party. And basically at that point, you know, the rogue, who, as I said, was on the periphery of the battlefield doing rogue things, just bolts. He's just like, nope, we can't. We're screwed. We can't win this
Yep.
anymore.
He
And
runs.
he runs for town. Um, which, like, both tactically and as a character decision, like, as a character, if you like put yourself in that character's shoes and you watch one of your allies teleport to the top of a rock and then fireball the entire arena, basically killing 2 of your allies, you're like, oh, okay, I guess he just betrayed us, I'm out.
Which
Like,
is fair. It's 100% fair. It really is. It's a fair assessment.
and I think I'll throw it back over to you for the rest of the story after that, because I guess that's kind of
Yes,
my side of it on what happened.
right. And yeah, like I said, as a player, the one thing I was worried about from the player's side after when we got to this point was obviously we can talk about this later too as well in the DM corner section, but the idea was that Rahadin or Strahd, I guess, provided Severus with an option. If you kill one of them, you can let the other live, and I'll just like we didn't know at the time, but he essentially branded us. With like a spell. There was also a spell which we figured out what it was. Not yesterday. So he gives Severus this option. Now, as a player, me personally, I don't really enjoy PvP stuff, and I don't really enjoy the idea of just like killing characters. But for Severus's character, it would make 100% sense to go for not Jafar. Jafar is like his buddy. They got to Barovia together. They were like in this group together. They're sort of like they play off each other. Like Jafar, for whatever reason, follows Severus everywhere, even though Severus just makes poor decisions. So Severus decides to kill Mogar with his staff with like a firebolt, basically, because that was one of the last charges available to him. And Rahadin brands both Jafar and Severus, and then more stuff ensues because obviously our rogue friend comes back and says, "Hey, did you betray us?" Now, there was an opportunity to bring Mogar back. Mogar decided not to, which is in character. And the one thing I will preface above all this when we talk about this later is that this is one of those things that you're always afraid of. I'm always afraid of is like when this kind of thing can happen, this scenario, because it happens. So I think one of the things I'm very happy about with this situation was everybody was just okay with it. Nobody was like, "Hey, what are you doing? What's wrong with you?" And just like completely getting upset with the other player, which is by the way, it would have been totally rational to have Mogar's character, or in this case Tay or Spoon, Spoon, come in and just like actually tell me what the hell are you doing? And I would have been totally like, yeah, that was a really stupid decision. It was really idiotic. I would totally stood frustration on that side. And that's something that that was like the hardest thing, and it was scary to see, okay, well, what happened? What happens if the player overreact? So it was good that Tay didn't, because he's a stable person, thank goodness. And that was like, that's Curse of Strahd situation. That was quite scary. Let's why don't you talk about the other one, actually, unless you want to add on to this?
I want to add
okay,
a few more points
sure.
To this. So part of the deal that you were given by Strahd, as Otto said, it's like, okay, you have to kill one of them, and the other one will survive with you, and you have to like, we're gonna brand you, or you're gonna have to do something for me. Also, Otto, as well as Severus, the character, know full well Mogar, being the lawful good druid that he was, would not have gone along with that.
Right.
Had Severus decided to kill Jafar, which again he wouldn't have done because he was his buddy, but say Severus had decided to bring Mogar back and
And
kill
kill
Jafar,
Jafar.
he would have had like Mogar would have died anyways on the spot. Like they would have said, "Oh, you brought Mogar back," and Mogar, they would have been like, "Oh, join us or do this." Mogar would have spat in their face, and he would have gotten cut down again. So
Just understandable.
it was the right decision. Like, we would have ended up with two dead characters instead of one. I knew as soon as that fireball hit and I was down, Jafar was down, and none of the enemies were dead, or they were probably hurt, but like not that close to being dead.
Mm-hmm.
I I I was shocked, and my initial reaction was like, Otto, what the F are you doing? Like, that was my first reaction. I was like, wait, really? Did you just fireball the party? Like,
I sure
okay.
did. I will right now say that I was thinking, man, this is a great idea. This is going to be a great idea. I just know this is going to work.
But as soon as like it played out the way it did. Like me and Jafar both failed our saving throws, so we both went down. Like I was like very close. Like it did like something like 30 damage, and I had like 28 or 29 health. It was like really close.
Hmm.
Um, and I as soon as I went down and the situation played out the way it did, I was resigned to the fact that my character was dead. I was like, there's no way, like unless the DM pulls some magic BS, this
Right.
character is dead. I'm like, there's just like there's no chance I come back from this. Like,
Right.
um, so yeah, I mean, and I won't say that like again, my initial reaction was like, WTF are you doing, Otto? And then after that, I mean, as Otto said, I'm a stable person, and in the end, it's a game. My D&D character died. Okay, I mean,
We've
yeah,
had it happen before. We really have had it
yeah,
happen
yeah,
before.
we've had a few character deaths in the past, and I won't say that I wasn't a little salty in the moment because I did really like that character, but again, in the end, it's a game, it's a fictional world, it's a fictional character, it's all for fun, and Otto and I are very good friends and have been very good friends for a long time. He would
Hmm.
have to do something far worse to me for us not to be friends anymore. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean it, and that's part of like if you play with a group of friends and or people that you generally like trust and are friendly with, those kinds of situations should be okay, even though if they're, you know,
Yeah, it's tough though. So, um, let's talk about the other campaign. I think let's just briefly go over it because it's a homebrew, and frankly, there are just too many elements for me to go over and things that I just don't remember. Just to being honest, but the it's a homebrew concept from your brother. It's got multiple different games meshing into it.
yeah,
Um,
JR, all of them are
it's all
JRPGs, but
JRPGs
yeah,
coming into this one campaign, and like we're in chapter 2 of the story. This is
or
like
yeah,
the second part of the campaign.
second half,
Second half, yeah, second half.
half of the campaign. We
And
like we played like the first half of the campaign, which is kind of its own self-contained story that had a somewhat resolution. We took a break for a bit, and now we're back for the
right,
second half.
we're back.
Like,
So let's just, like I said, I do want to keep this one brief because just because there's just so many working parts of this one, and like Curse of Strahd had that like one moment, but um, just going over our characters quickly. So I had two. I'm not going to talk about the first one actually. I'm just going to gloss over that. The first one was just Rexar, from Warcraft lore. He just it's a guy who lives with nature with his bear companion. Um, and this character that I have now, his name is Mace. Um, his character previously was like he came from a I will say lower middle class family, and he decided early on to join a military in one of the cities. I won't say the city, but he joins his military, and then partway through his career, he encounters some enemies, and he gets some amnesia as a result of experimentation that is done to him. So he
amnesia,
after
classic JRPG trope.
classic. It's perfect. It worked really well. So
Yeah,
he he gets, for whatever reason, somehow when we start the campaign, he's in this other place called Niakara, which is straight from Tales of Xillia, and he stumbles upon the party that is currently there, and that's he has new magic powers taken straight from Leoric from Diablo lore, pretty much, where we call it like he has like a ghost basically, but he can steal the life force of enemies. So that's my character. Excuse me, that's my character. And Spoon, you have had two characters also.
yeah,
You can
not
decide which
not
one to talk about more.
not due to a death. In this one. So the first character that I played for the entirety of the first half or the first campaign, and then the first like 10 sessions or so of the second campaign. His name was Thorl. He is a monk. backstory is he basically was saved by angels as a child, and worships these angels. But it's a religion that like nobody believes in, so people think he's a crazy person, and he's kind of an outcast because of it. That's kind of his backstory.
Hmm.
Goes on a grand adventure, helps save the world. You know how it goes. Um, and in the second campaign, we got to a point which the DM and I had discussed at the onset of creation of the character, um, that I would be given this choice at some point in the campaign. I didn't know when it would be.
Hmm.
And obviously, the DM gave me the heads up as we were approaching this point, so I could think about it. Um, Basically, I was offered by my deities, these angels, to basically ascend and become one of them. Um, and I chose to go with that. Nobody was able to convince him otherwise. And having a character who is basically sole purpose in life has been devotion to these deities, and having worshipped them and gotten his strength from them, be a little bit hard to go back on that. So and that will have repercussions down the line. I'm not going to spoil anything, but you will see Thorol again. Um,
And his no shirt ways.
yes, and his no shirt ways.
Because why wear a
Um,
shirt?
and my current character is Pascal, who is lifted straight out of Tales of Graces, which is not that great of a game, but she's a funny character. She's basically like a total airhead, and it's been interesting trying to play that character. I'm not sure how successful I've been. I think at times quite successful, and other times not. It's like it's a hard balance of trying to figure out like when I have to be serious, and like
Right.
when I can kind of meme and like be not
I
serious, and
mean,
like when
yeah.
I can't figure out anything to say that would make sense for the character, at which point I just keep my mouth shut. So that's been interesting.
Right.
Um,
As the character witnessing this, I can tell you Pascal is a really fun character to be. Pascal is a character that's she's like that she's it's like the person you see in movies, and sometimes you hate it. And for the people that hate it, go for it. You're perfectly fine hating this. That's like the comedy relief character. It's like a serious situation, and Pascal just comes in and just delivers this one liner or like this fun like follow up line, and you like it. It lightens up the mood. It breaks the ice. It's very fun to have that kind of personality with you. As much as I personally don't like a super serious, everybody serious type of situation campaign. I always feel like there has to be one person that can break the ice or like lighten the mood. So Pascal's that. I enjoy having that. Me personally, just because usually I enjoy being that character. So I'm supremely
but
happy
your
that we have that.
Yeah, but your character is not that in this campaign.
Yeah, my character's like more serious than normal. Keep in mind, my other
Yeah.
character's like I kicked the door as an entrance, so every door had to
Yeah,
be kicked down.
that was
Mace
that was the
is
character.
Mace is definitely a more serious character than I've made, but at the same time, like I always like adding that
Yeah.
humor, that
Little bit of
dry,
snark to
snarky
him.
humor, just
Yeah.
like not sure if it's like it's that person that just questions like these people really this is
Yeah.
the group anyway.
Yeah. And the other thing about Pascal, real quick, before soon we're gonna move on,
Hmm.
is that like she like her best stat is charisma. She's like a charisma caster. Again, it's homebrew, so all the like it's not like a particular class from D&D or anything like
Right.
that. But she's a charisma caster, and like and then like her intelligence is also relatively high, but her wisdom is -1. So it's like basically she's like really intelligent and really like a really bubbly and like enthusiastic personality, always has something to say,
Hmm.
but then like she doesn't understand like sarcasm and like stuff. Like she takes everything very literally, like when
Right.
you say something like if you were to say something like, "Oh, so you're the one to break the ice," she would like take a hammer and smash a block of ice or something like
So
that.
I
It's
haven't
like,
I haven't broken any
yeah,
ice yet. It's like, oh, okay.
yeah,
Okay. um but we are moving on. We will move on to this is just not even clever wording. It's just like let's just talk a bit about this idea of we both of us has DM'd a couple times.
Yep.
With this group, I've DM'd like different groups before, and let's talk a bit about early DM mistakes, new DM mistakes. I don't know if mistakes is the perfect word because sometimes like we think it's a mistake and then you get more information from other sources and you think you sort of like recollect and maybe this wasn't a mistake and think about it properly. So let's talk about new DM mistakes within the context of whether it's our first campaigns or just generally like speaking even now, things that people tend to do that we see. Um, I'm gonna throw it to you first. You can talk about it from your experience or from the perspective of, okay, I was a player with a DM who's new. What happened that you saw and was like, oh, this seems weird or this seems off.
Um, hmm, hmm, hmm. um, I'm not thinking of any specific like situations in this case, but I have a couple of like things that I'll talk about. First of all, for anyone who's like thinking about being a DM, and I'm pretty sure anyone who has DM'd before would say this, if you want to DM, like just give it a shot. Like it's a very daunting task, and people like I feel like get overwhelmed by like how much work it is and like, oh man, what if I'm a terrible DM? My players won't like it, I'm gonna do such a bad job, yada yada, and you just get too self-conscious about it. You just got to go for it. Like, if you have a cool idea and you want to try it out, like, I mean, you obviously let your players know that you're a new DM and, give you some leniency. But generally, as a DM, if you're having fun, the players are probably having fun too. Like, if you're invested, the players will be invested. So, like, that's kind of my number one, where it's like, if you're hesitant with as being a DM, but you want to try it, but you're just too overwhelmed by the
Mm-hmm.
thought of it, then I would just say just give it a shot, go for it. Assuming you have the time, because it is a lot of work. It does take a lot of time.
Oh yeah, it's
Um,
depending on how much work you want to put into it. Yeah, it's a lot.
Fair enough. Um, the other thing that I'll say, and we may talk about this later as I see it as one of the later talking points, is that like
We can talk about it now, by the way. Just to
the
interrupt,
play the
you can
play
always talk
the
about it
play
now.
the player's handbook and like the rules are not like the hard and fast way to play the game. And even the designers of the rules have said this. The rules are there as a guideline, but as the DM, you can feel free to bend and or break any of the rules that you feel like, if you don't agree with them or you just don't think it works or whatever the situation may be. And I feel like that was my greatest challenge as a DM, I think, at first. Because if I were to classify myself as one of the stereotypes of D&D players, I would classify myself as a rules lawyer. And I know a lot of people hate rules lawyers, but I come from a family of two lawyers. So I kind of got ingrained in me from a young age, like how important like following the rules were. And so yeah, I think in the early days, like as both as a player and a DM, I got a little too set on following the rules to a T.
Mm.
And I'm sure, or hopefully Otto can attest that I've gotten much better about that as the years have gone on.
I will admit, because I'm such a nice person, I never thought it was ever a problem. I don't think this is something that, and I'll talk about the other stuff that I feel with DM. Keep in mind, we're not the end all be all knowledge base. It's always nice to get different perspective. So, in regards to like the stereotypes, if Spoon calls himself that, which I would agree, in the nicest way though, I think it's nice to have a rules person because when everybody is willing to bend the rules too much, that's where I think problems can happen. So having somebody that comes in and is a knowledgeable about some things is nice. Like I don't have everything memorized or even like just I'm always referring to the book for even the smallest stuff. I mean, it's just like having somebody who can just pop off and say something that is I think it's valuable to have that. Now, obviously going overboard is a whole separate issue, but you know, having somebody, even if they're not the DM, converse and say, hey, just want to clarify, or just want to say this is what it says in the book. Is that the way we're playing, or is it something else? That's a good thing, because then you can. The DM is wrong sometimes, so being able to, and if the DM isn't willing to correct themselves and admit they're wrong, that's a problem. DM can't be, you know, a this like despotic entity, and I hate that word, by the way, because it's always used in college on me. So can't believe I'm using it here. But I think all those points that you talked about are good, and I don't think stereotypes are in here. I think we see stereotypes in like whatever videos or media, and we automatically think of that. Um, so just wanted to point all that out. But I think all the points that you've made are good points, particularly with bending the rules. The only reason I highlighted that is because that one I think is really important too. Um, the one thing I will say about DMs, particularly new ones, is, and I'll use a couple examples. There are, I'm not going to say confidence is an issue or anything like that. I think it's more sometimes new DMs don't play their strengths enough. So I'm going to use your brother as a good example. This is a good example, by the way, not a bad one. So if you feel it's bad, you can correct me. But your brother has openly admitted some of his strengths and weaknesses, and I think that's a good thing. When you can openly admit what you're maybe not as strong at and things that you're really good at, and you play that way, and you're pretty much open and you're transparent, I should say, with your players about those strengths and weaknesses and how you want to run your game, then we all come into the table, onto the table with the same mindset, with the same expectations of what's going to happen. But sometimes I play with not even just you guys. I've played with other DMs before where they don't necessarily play to what I think their strengths are, and it like kind of gets wonky. Like if you're not a DM that's really good at quote unquote tuning combat, do your best, but don't focus too much on it. Don't If that's not your strength right now, that's okay. Do other things that can make things exciting, because it's not all about one thing in particular like combat. But I've also seen DMs who are really good at like the storytelling side. Maybe not like complication, but just like general progression of story and keeping things focused. If you're good at that, do that. If you're good at making something more complicated and with tons of different like loops coming together, great, do that. So I think one of the I don't that's why I said I don't think it's a mistake necessarily, that's a bad one. It's just like you learn it eventually. You're good at something, and if you're not good at one of the things that is a part of D&D, that's totally fine. Just do your best, get some help from the books, and let everybody know the expectation that is, hey, look, I'm not great at. I personally am not super great at combat stuff. I infamously had resurrecting enemies like 3 combats in a row. That was definitely a nuisance to some people. So that's not necessarily my strength, and I'm okay with that. But I'm pretty good at improv. That's the stuff that I like to do. I like to improv, and I like to like make role playing like come alive, which is something that's more of a theater thing. I've always enjoyed doing improv and theater type of scenarios. That's the kind of stuff that I would love to bring to DM. So I think DM mistake, play to your strengths.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And I think it's also important to, if you're starting a new campaign, whether it's with a new set of players or people you know or not, to set expectations for that campaign, like when you set out, like before you even like start playing. Like people talk about like having a session 0 where you like all get together and like make characters, or
Right.
just like talk about what the excuse me, what the campaign is going to be all about. And Otto said like sort of laying out your strengths in that session 0 and saying like, hey, this is going to be like a very like combat heavy campaign. Like I think one of my, this is as an example, like one of my strengths is like designing fun and interesting and challenging combat. So that's going to be a main focal point of the campaign. And most sessions will involve like an hour to 2 hour combat because
Mm-hmm.
of that. but there may be less like of the smaller like interactions and like yeah, I mean again, that's just as an example.
Mm.
Of setting those expectations, or if you want to, as Otto said, go on like the improv and like role play side of things. It's like, all right, I'm gonna throw you guys in like a city or a scenario, and I'm just gonna tell you guys I maybe give you a few options, and then just tell you guys do what you want, and then we'll go from there. Like so, there's lots of different kinds of campaigns. There's
Right.
linear ones, there's like combat focused ones, there's very like branching path, like choose your own adventure type things. And yeah, as Otto said, I think every DM has their strengths and weaknesses. And yeah, when you're starting out as DM, you don't know what those are,
Yeah, of course
but
not.
um, I think you'll find them pretty quickly. To
Oh
be
yeah,
honest, when you start
every
doing it,
everybody
like
does. I pretty much I have a decent idea of everybody in our group strengths and weaknesses, and everybody in our group has a specific way of how they run things. And I'm not going to say it's all bad or good. Sometimes I don't feel as strongly about certain things, but that's not bad. That's just like my personal preference isn't X when theirs is. And I set my expectations going in and say, okay, well, if that's a personal preference, that's great. That's fine for me. I'll definitely work on it. It's something that I'll improve on my own. For our group, we don't really have that table situation where we're new people coming into a table and the DM, so basically like we don't we're like a cohesive group that can just like, well, regardless, we're just going to come in and play anyway. But there are situations that exist where the DM sets those expectations and all the people at the table don't know each other the same way we do. And a good reason to do the expectations early is so that if people don't like that, they can get up from the table. It's totally fine. And that's
yep,
a good reason to do that. Okay. Spoon, what are any others that you could think of off the top of your head? We've got some time. We can just chat here about it.
yeah.
So,
Um, let's
uh,
see.
we did talk about, I mean,
Yeah,
learn to bend the rules. I'll
yeah.
just that's my thing. Learn to
That's
bend the rules. It's
that's
okay.
definitely important. I guess I can go into a few examples
Mhm.
of bending the rules. So and these are the two examples like that I talk about, and I think I mentioned this like the other day when we played.
Yeah.
So in the player's handbook for fifth edition, there are two like rules that are stated in the handbook that I 100% don't agree with and I think are stupid. Um, one, that chugging a potion costs an action. So basically, you don't really get to do much else on your turn other than to
Mhm.
chug a potion and like move, which like you always get to move. Um, and with how weak healing potions are, the standard ones being 2d4 plus 2 hit points, it like you're gonna take that damage like right back. Like I don't know. To me, it just doesn't feel worth it. So we pretty much throughout in the group that we play, we have house ruled that like it's a bonus action to quaff a healing potion.
Mhm.
So, and I've seen that done in other camp, like Critical Role, for example. Like they play by that rule as well. Um, and the other rule in that is again explicitly stated in the player's handbook that I 100% disagree with is that you are not allowed to cast as a spellcaster. You are not allowed to cast more than one spell in a turn. So basically, if you have a spell that is a bonus action, you can't cast another spell as your action. Um, which to me defeats the purpose of bonus action spells. Like I guess if like quaffing a potion was an action, it would make a little more sense. But like I just like as a caster, I don't know what you do with your action if you don't
Keep going. Keep
like
going.
if you cast a spell with your bonus action and you can't cast another spell with your
Right.
action. I mean, yeah, if you're up close in combat, maybe you want to use your action to engage like that, or maybe you want to move further, so you're going to use your action to dash. In that case, I get it. But in situations where like you're chilling as a wizard like 100 feet away from the fight, just slinging firebolts and whatever else
Mhm.
at the fight, it's like I'm chilling. I want to cast whatever, I like, okay, as a druid, I want to cast like healing word as a bonus action and like get somebody up or could just get that little bit of healing on somebody, and then I want to like call lightning as an action or something like that.
Mhm.
Like I don't see what's like, I don't know. I
Yeah.
just the rules kind of dumb. So
Sorry. I think. They were ordering dinner or something. Yeah, they're going Nick. Okay, they're going Nick. So anyway, yeah, no. I like I said, we've talked about this before. Like the healing potion thing, I think is just. I think to a certain extent, if it's a big enough healing potion, sure, why not? But if it's like a small one, like actions are supposed to be how many seconds? Like 6? I don't even remember.
I mean, a full round
Full
takes
round.
is
Okay.
6 seconds. So like everybody's turn in a round, no matter how many characters are
Right.
on the field,
Well.
is again, it's supposed to be like, a real world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So everything's supposed to be happen like basically simultaneously, but initiative is just like you just have that slight like split second jump
Right.
on the person you're ahead of in initiative or whatever. So
Right.
like everything's kind of happening simultaneously, but it's a board game, so it kind of has to be turn based. There's
Of
no other way to
course,
do it.
it has to be.
So,
No, I agree. The small, like we talked about it, it's like that little flask, that little thin one, the test tube size thing. We think
yeah.
that's the healing potion. That is easily drink. You can drink that so fast. But like maybe a larger one's like the size of this Coke can, for example.
Yeah.
This one for 6 seconds might make sense. Just chugging this, and sure, why not? Um, and the spells thing, I think I had mentioned this before. The spells thing, there's a universe I could see that making sense. Um, Particularly if you're like chanting some of those like incantation, maybe you're chanting, I don't know. But
Yeah.
for our sake, as a house rule, I'm never
Yeah.
against that stuff for
And
sure.
yeah, again, I think I agree with you. I think the rationale for the rule in the book is that like you know when you cast a spell in D&D, they're supposed to be like you're supposed to chant and like wave your hands and like
Right,
throw some material components out of a pouch or something and do the thing. You don't just say like fireball, pew, and it happens. It's like
right,
there's more to it than that, and that's the rationale for the rule. But like
right,
mechanically, I don't like how the rule
right.
works.
Which we
Yeah.
understand. My bending rule is this, and we talked about this one as my house rules in the campaign that I'm going to run. Um, Punching. I don't care how weak you are. If Spoon punches me, it's going to hurt. I don't care if he's weak or strong or what. The
I'm pretty
fact that
weak.
I don't even care. If you punch me in the nose, I will hurt. I will
Yeah.
take 1 damage. Like, I'm sorry. But, if you're like a weak adult, a punch dealing 0 damage to me is like, I don't want to say it's stupid, but it's ridiculous. Like, I'm sorry. I think any of my friends, you know, even if my fiance Kate punched me in the face, it would still kind of hurt if she hit me.
Assuming they were really trying to punch you in
Yeah,
the
they're
face,
really
like they're
trying
going
to.
full strength, like not like
Right.
a baby, like no,
So
like they're
like
actually trying to hurt you by punching
in
you in the
D and
face, which
D,
is
even
which is
if
what you're doing. Yeah,
right, even if a character is -1 strength, and you've explained to the rules before, they're not a monk or whatever else. A punch dealing 0 damage that actually connects is just like, it's almost laughable to me because I'm just like, no,
yeah.
I'm sorry. A punch hit. If it's like, maybe if they punch me like even in the like chest, like they punch me in the face, I'll probably start bleeding. Like it's just like that one is the silliest bending of rules. So my house rule for that in my campaign, which I'm going to use from now on, by the way, every punch that's thrown that connects, it deals at least 1 damage. Because that is just like the silliest scenario where it's just like a wizard punched me in the face, but it did 0 damage because he's so weak. It's like, okay, if a wizard lived here right now and punched me in the face, I guarantee you it would do 1 damage. Almost guarantee that.
Yeah,
That is like
yeah,
this. That is my favorite silly rule that I was just like, that no, just
yeah.
no.
It's just the numbers game. Like a punch does 1 damage plus your strength modifier, but if you're again, for example, a wizard, which would usually dump strength, I would
Right.
think it would be 1 - 1, so do 0 damage.
Which
Like
again, just like, come on, he hit me in the face. Something happened.
and that's like the opposite side of the coin from the spells rule we were just talking about. That's like realism over mechanics. The
Right.
mechanics would say this does 0 damage because it does 1 - 1, but the
Mm.
realism would say you just got punched in the face, you took 1 damage.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Like
Like
if I get punched in the face, like I'm taking the damage. Like I don't care if you're weak or not. Like that's just how I feel about it. So anyway, yeah. So I mean so we talked a bit about some of our DM mistakes. Again, we can, there are so many, and we talked about betting the rules, which I think is so important, and that's a DM mistake in and of itself. I would say go through some of our potential questions or comments, but we don't have any. which, it happens. And so we'll just sort of wind down. So I'll wind down with a bit of shout out here. So besides obviously thanking Spoon for his time and in doing this, which he can talk a bit about right when I'm done with the sellout stuff here. So again, whether you're watching this now or in like a VOD of some kind, Myriathon Rescue is summer 2020. It is going to be June 11th to 14th. We will be not streaming as I would say, as a full marathon, as in we're streaming straight 72 plus hours. We'll be taking breaks in the evening. We're currently tightening up the schedule a bit more. I think we've got almost all of it done, and that will hopefully be released soon.
Yep,
Soon.
we're
Soon.
waiting. I guess we're waiting on Abandon to release the schedule. I
Right.
don't know what his plan is for that, but we did have a scheduling meeting at the end of last week, so
We're
that should be
figuring things
coming
out.
out
Yeah, we're figuring
relatively
things out.
soon. I would think it's
Yes.
pretty much ready.
Now, as for the Myriacast in particular, I will not guarantee every week, but I will try my best at this Monday slot, 5 p.m. Pacific. So if you're, for example, in your central time zone, that's 7. If you're where Spoon is, that's
It's 8 now.
8. 8.
It was 9 before you guys.
It was 9 before we changed everything.
Times.
And then East Coast obviously is also 8. We'll try and, either talk about, I'd like to hone in on more JRPG, RPG types. Also D&D, just because it's a good, I mean, we both like it. And it's a good conversation. It's an RPG, so there you go. And yeah, I think if you're interested in talking during that Myriacast segment, or if you're also interested in just hanging out with us outside of it, we have a Discord. I don't have the Discord link on the screen right now, but you can find me on Twitter, and my Twitter in particular. Once I pull it up, it's probably bad I don't know my own Twitter. It's at Automaton 89, not Automaton 1969. That was a joke for this.
I didn't even realize.
He didn't even notice it. That's how good it was.
Didn't
even notice it. And
Man.
Spoon, why don't you go ahead and tell a little bit your like Twitter? Obviously you're not streaming at the moment, but if you
I am not streaming at the moment. For anyone who knows me or anything about me, I'm in medical school in Grenada right now, so I could stream. I probably, if I really wanted to, but I have not spent the time to set it up. Nor do I want to spend that time because
Right.
I have plenty of work to do in medical school. I will stream when I'm home, which will be in mid-May, and I'll be prepping for the Myriathon and then at the Myriathon. For that, yeah, when I get home and stream, I'll be streaming the Cage 3 DLC, which I haven't gotten to play yet because I don't have my PS4 with me, and probably Final Fantasy VII Remake, because I want to play that. I believe the Discord link for the Myriathon, by the way, is below
in the stream. Yes, I can actually
stream.
double check that just to be sure. But
yeah, I know nobody looks at like the panels below the stream. I don't know why, but nobody looks at those. Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know.
There's no Discord under there, but like I said, I can pull it up like right now on the overlay.
There's a big Discord icon and it has a hyperlink on it.
Are you serious? Am I going? This is what happens when you get older, folks. You lose things.
Yeah.
There is one. It's at the very bottom.
Yep.
It is below stream. Okay, thank you, Russell in chat. Yeah. He has eyes. I don't.
It's like the biggest thing. It's just the icon for Discord.
My eyes don't work.
Yeah.
But anyway, continue. Sorry, continue.
So yeah, that's me. My Twitter is at SPTspoon. One of the I don't know of any other SPTspoons on anything else, so you should find me if you're looking for me on Twitter. I think if you enjoy the Myriathon or the Myriacast or anything that we do in any way, please do us a solid and follow the stream, follow the Twitter, like and retweet when we do stuff. We're trying to increase our visibility and social media presence. I know it's kind of the streams are pretty inconsistent and this and that, but we're trying to do our best as a group of getting the
Mhm.
name out there, getting the information out there, and having a really fun, successful marathon in the summer. Hopefully, we can do the Myriacast every week and maybe build
Yeah,
a little
hopefully.
bit of a little bit of a following with that. Maybe we'll try and this will be up to Otto since he's seemingly hosting it, but
For
maybe
now,
we'll
we'll
try,
see. For now.
yeah, for now, as long as we can. But hopefully we can try and get some guests on, stuff like that.
Hmm.
Um,
I can, like I said, I'll be for a temporary host until somebody does it better. Is my thing. Um,
yeah.
I think yes, we will look for new hosts. We will look for guests too. Not that I don't enjoy having Spoon, but we'll definitely add in a third guest here and there as well to be able to sort of bring in some more perspective. I think perspective is always super important, not just like the
No,
D and D side, but
by guest I meant like someone who's not part of the
yeah,
Myriathon.
exactly. No,
Yeah.
I'm with you there. So bring
Okay.
in somebody that's a little bit outside of our own community that can come in and maybe not necessarily just like a D&D topic focus thing, but also the RPG side, the RPGs. We'll definitely look for that. And yeah, like Spoon said, if you enjoy the content at all, just please follow, support us any way you can. And my hope in particular, since I'm spearheading this a bit, is that I can be consistent enough to get this, at this time slot, and we can just talk about various different things like D&D. This will be the end of the return to Myriacast for today, but just again, thank you, Spoon, for joining me, good friend, and
Of course.
good.
Always a pleasure.
Like I said, if you're someone who's curious about like D&D at all, he's the person I would talk to about anything related to like rules, like characters, things like that. That's not my domain necessarily. I'm just good at theories and like ideas. So any of those questions, please direct it to him. And thank you, like I said, for watching, and we will be back next week, hopefully.